Hey everybody, just wanted to let you guys know that this episode was recorded on Thursday of last week, and we just had the banned and restricted announcement today on Monday, so a lot of this might be a little outdated, but definitely wanted to get this episode to you guys eventually, and we will have our normal episode this week. Alright, thanks again. On with the episode.
In a world of Johnnies, Timmies, and Spikes, we must all arrive at the win condition.
This is Tom Brokaw with your Magic the Gathering weekly update.
Oh, my gateway flips. I now tap that for 15 mana. Do I win the game?
My dirtily fantasies drive my Magic game. Hello again, and welcome back to the Win Condition Podcast, your source for lore, news, and brews in the MTG community. My name is Sean. I'm your host. I'm joined by my co-host Greg. How's it going, Greg?
It's doing good this evening.
Excellent.
That's right. I did say
Wonderful.
evening. We're recording it.
Yes, indeed. On this Thursday evening, right, for the first time in a while. How's your week been going, man?
Oh man, work's been slow. I had the GP this past weekend. Made a little bit of money there. That was good. Overall,
That's
it's okay.
right. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that a little bit later. I actually forgot to mention over New Year's, I had a lot of fun actually teaching a couple of my relatives how to play Magic. And they liked it.
What?
Surprise, surprise. It was a ton of fun. We actually used some modern decks and a deck that has since rotated out of standard that I haven't really adjusted yet. But, I mean, they both played Pokemon. I think they may have played Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I'm not 100% sure. But it was just fun to watch them pick up the deck and kind of understand each of the cards as they played into it. And so they'd be like, wait, this card does this, right? And I'm like, yes, you're getting it. So those moments are always really cool when you're teaching somebody how to play Magic.
Yeah, they are pretty sweet. You are correct.
Yeah. Indeed. So, Greg, guess what?
Did the dinosaurs take over the world and now we are their slaves?
Not quite, but if you want to buy some dinosaur cards, be sure to head over to Flipside Gaming at flipsidegaming.com, where any order over $10 or more, you can use that promo code WINCONDITION in all caps when you're buying those singles or your sealed product, and it'll save you 10% off your purchase, which will help contribute to our future show giveaways. I know we're coming up here on, oh my gosh, is this episode 40?
This is
I think this is episode 40. What? All right, we got to do a giveaway here. We'll plan on
1 year of casting.
We are, yeah, indeed. Oh my gosh, you're right there too. Man, we got to take some stock. Anyway, yeah, so head on over to Flipside, order some product, help us out, and so we can help you out. But anyway, back to another pertinent issue. Greg, why don't we head on over? We got some new stuff here. Why don't we head on over to Lore Corner?
I can head over to Lore Corner. I'm down with that.
Nice. Well, it's been a while. I mean, we've covered a couple individual character stories in the meantime between the Ixalan, and now we have the Rivals of Ixalan story coming out. And our first chapter is entitled The Flood. Now, I know there's a lot of water on Ixalan, but I think this flood is referring to something else, isn't it, Greg?
Oh yeah, it's totally referring to something else.
Okay. Well, do you want to start us off here?
Do you remember where we left off?
I do. But why don't we give our listeners a quick little refresher of where we left off?
So last thing we knew, Kamena had ran off to the city of Orazka. Jace was heading there with Vraska when their vessel ran aground. Orazka was rising in the distance, and Jace lost his footing, fell over a waterfall, caught himself, and hit his head. And
Yep.
a flow of images starts coalescing around him and Vraska. And that was the last we
Mm-hmm.
knew.
And those
Talk about a
images.
cliffhanger, right?
That's funny. Yeah, those images that were coming back were images from Jace's past. So
Yeah,
Vraska
yeah.
immediately was a little concerned that he wasn't going to be the same Jace that she'd grown to know and
And love.
possibly develop some feelings for. Yeah, exactly.
No
So anyway,
possible. Jeez. There's feelings there. Strong
yep,
ones at that.
yep. Well, we also have a couple other people heading towards the Golden City. We have Huatli with
Uh huh.
Angrath. They're on their way there. We also have Vona and her vampires heading there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone's racing to the finish line of this Golden Sun. So
Whoa,
we
did you
first
forget about
join.
Tashana?
Oh no, Tishana is with. Oh, she left Huatli, didn't she?
She
That's
sure did.
right.
She's like, all right,
Yeah,
this is as
Tishana was
far as
with.
I'm taking you. It's time for me to go in there and take care of this on my own.
Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. So we regroup here, and the story begins with Kumena. So we see Kumena dashing through the undergrowth. So, forests, rivers, and he's moving very deftly through, and it describes the terrain sort of helping him move faster and more efficiently. To reach his destination, and he could feel it. He was getting a lot closer, and then he eventually reaches this cliff. It's like this gigantic waterfall, and he looks out and he can see the golden spires of Aroska in the distance. And he says to himself, at last, he's finally reached his destination. So
Yep.
he sees a gigantic staircase and just immediately decides, I want to get up there. Let's see what's going on. So he starts ascending the staircase, walking up towards this big golden building on the top. And he's wondering, how long it's been since anyone has made this trip up the stairs. Hundreds of years. Nobody knows. So, and he wonders why he had no idea about all this stuff. Being one of the river's heralds, I mean, they know so much about the land of Ixalan, and yet this he was very unfamiliar with.
Yeah, no. So as he reaches the archway at the top of the stairs, he is blinded and he notices that this city is entirely made of gold. Although it doesn't interest him in any way. Um, so he moves through, stepping through the golden city. He feels as he moves closer and closer to the immortal sun, his power strong, getting stronger and just stronger. And he knew the immortal sun was wanting to be found, not that it was just sitting there. And then a
Right.
voice
And it was
calls to
speaking
him.
to him.
This
Yes.
is Kamena the Shaper, child of the great river, leader of your people. Come set me free. And of course, he's a little dumbfounded. He has no idea what's talking to him. And over
Yep.
some talking, he's like, oh yeah, you've got to be the immortal sun. How the heck can you reach out to me? What's going on? So, as he's walking through the city, the gold is shimmering light on him. He sees in the gold reflections of himself, and they have variations. So they're not actually reflections, they're kind of different versions of himself.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so then he gets up to another tower, and he sees the tower to his right and a gateway in front of him. And, he's just not the type to deal with a hard problem. He's direct and very rigid. So he climbs the staircase to where the immortal sun is sitting on the ground.
Yep. Yep. And as he looks around, you could even hear that all he is concerned with is getting the power of the immortal sun. I mean, he's got this opulent golden building around him, And he even says that doesn't matter to me. He sees these creatures lurking in the shadows, and he sees their eyes, and he goes, that doesn't matter to me. The only thing that he wants is power. He wants to
Yep.
find the immortal sun. He wants to harness its power, and if for nothing else, just to be the first one there to get it so he can claim it for his own. I mean,
Correct.
Nobody really knows the power of the immortal sun. So, the curiosity and just the sheer hunger for power is driving him forward. So he eventually, heads inside and sees it. He sees this incredible immortal sun, but he looks at it and he says, "Well, it's just kind of a rock. It's this stone, and the stone is in the floor. It's not that impressive, honestly, but there's no denying that he feels the power as he gets closer and closer to it. So he stands on the immortal sun, and it just starts to glow, and he can feel the power coursing through him. And the card Kumena's Awakening has the art where he's actually standing atop the immortal sun, and he's starting to feel this power and see it, for the first time. And then he gets actually interrupted by a vampire.
Yep.
And he whirls around, and the vampire that we know as Vona, who he has never met before, approaches, and I'll just quote it right here. It says, she was grinning, and her collar was covered in blood. And Kumena looks at her and goes, "It's not yours to take, vampire. One conquistador is no match for me." Well, then in steps Mavrin Fane, her Hierophant friend vampire, and they begin to subdue him. They rush after him, tackle him, and he's not like he doesn't have an immediate superpower, so he gets overthrown quite easily. Vona actually ends up, after cutting him a few times, throwing him out the window. I mean, I guess the immortal sun doesn't prevent you from being thrown out the window, but yeah. So she is now in the building with the immortal sun alongside her buddy Mavrin, and yeah, so Vona has kind of staked her claim. She's the king of the hill now, or queen of the hill. And then we leave the actual immortal sun, the room it is in, and we head back to another friend of ours. We head back to Vraska.
And as Vraska and Jace are there on the riverbank, Jace is in agony, blood all over his head, in his hair, and his eyes just teeming with magic he has no control over. Vraska swims towards him, tries to pull him out of where he's at so he could be in a safer spot. And of course, knowing how head injuries work, she could only imagine how much worse it could be for an illusionist like Jace, such a high caliber person that deals everything in his mind. Then while she's thinking this, everything changes. And we see Seagate after its fall on Zendikar. She just kind of has a hard time dealing with it because it's so being thrown into her mind, it's hurting her.
Right.
After that, it vanishes. And she's trying to distract Jace so that she can pull him back into reality and stop having these illusions. And he was in so much agony that he just couldn't. And then they pull themselves to the side of the shore, and another vision. This time, definitely not as nice. It's a metallic world. We see Tezzeret, but she, of course, has no idea who that is.
She's describing the strange man's abdomen is, held together with metal, and but this time, unlike at the Seagate record scene, she actually sees Jace on the floor, and she immediately realizes that this is one of Jace's memories from his past, and she sees him being tortured on the ground. Tezzeret and looks like some other Phyrexian people here are
Mm-hmm.
torturing him, and Tezzeret says to him, "I'm going to make damn sure you learn from this debacle." And Vraska, she sympathizes. She's thinking back to her own time of being tortured, and she says, "Wow, I had no idea that Jace had to undergo something similar to what I did." And so quickly, though, after that, she snaps back to reality on Ixalan and tries to convince Jace. She says, Jace, it's just a memory. You're safe. Everything's fine. But then just like that, Jace's eyes are still just like brightly glowing blue. She gets whisked away to another memory of his, but this time it's in a familiar territory.
And this time, it's in a gruel um, kind of area back on Ravnica, and it's a grubby looking Jace. I mean, he can't be much more than 15. And he's there with a Gruul shaman as she's getting ready to cast an enchantment on his hand. And essentially, she finds out that this isn't the look of Jace when he was there. This is a Jace that just has visited
Hmm.
Ravnica for the first time. And he has no memory of anything here. So, of course, he's getting tattooed on him the only memory he has, which is his sigil, which is also the sigil of Alhamaret. And it's just kind of funny to think of what's going on here. I think one of my favorite lines here is the shaman is getting ready to tattoo Jace with this enchantment that's going to infuse mana into him, essentially. And she tells him to take a swig of something, drink alcohol, something, and says, "This'll hurt like a Rakdos comedy." Now, of course, at this point, Jace has no idea what Rakdos comedy is, but we as the players, definitely know. And Vraska does too, and she has a chuckle and a smile because of
Yep.
how funny it is to her. Um,
So,
and then after the tattoos are put back on, they're right back
yep,
to Erosia.
flashback once more. Vraska tries to talk to Jace, get him out of this state of agony with his memories just pouring forth in this flood of memories that
Mm-hmm.
Jace is having. Um, and again, immediately she gets whisked away, but
Yep.
this time it's a very, very different scene. Um, she finds herself in a room with a woman clad in violet, who we know as Liliana, but she doesn't know that yet. But what she does see,
Not
it
yet.
no, what she does see is Jace interacting with her, and based on their conversations, Vraska deduces a few things. Number one, she deduces that this woman is pretty disinterested in Jace and his well being and his feelings, however, has no problem
Mm-hmm.
manipulating him, actually drinking with him, getting him drunk, um, and realizes that Jace, while he is a telepath and incredibly smart, just continues to get taken advantage of. And he's saying,
Yeah.
oh well, I'd probably better be going. It's getting late, and then Lilian is like, well, let me just pour us another glass of wine. You really don't have to go, and Jace is just. I think Vraska notices Jace sitting here looking up at her, hoping, just praying for one form of affirmation or not pride, but something from Liliana to Jace
To
to
show that she cares.
exactly, and she just never gives it
Yep.
to him. And Vraska sits there and watches this way that he's treated, and is just
Display.
utterly in shock of what happened to Jace here. And she also finds out that they have a past, that there's something more to
Yeah.
them just being in the same room together, knowing each other. So, kind of unsettles Vraska a little bit. She feels like she's not supposed to be there. Um, but
It feels like a memory that she's not supposed to be seeing.
exactly, exactly. So, once again, they blip flash, the image dissolves, and they're back on Ixalan. And again, she tries to break Jace from his torrential outburst of memories.
Which, of course, is not any good for him.
No, no.
You didn't even say the funny line.
What lines?
The toast to Emrakul.
Oh,
For
yeah.
doing our job for us.
Well, just say it. Just say it. Go ahead.
When they first start drinking, Jace was smiling. At toast to Emrakul, he quips, for doing our job for us. Because, as we know, Emrakul pretty much forced them to imprison her in the moon.
Yep.
Then the next time that they get back, they are back to Ixalan, and
Oh, and Vraska thinks to herself, was there anyone in Jace's life who hadn't tried to take advantage of him or his talents?
yeah,
I mean, Vraska herself, employed Jace, brought her onto the ship in order to use his abilities. That's the first of their encounter here on Ixalan, She wanted him to, give the illusion that their ship wasn't there so that they could, intercept the Legion of Dusk ship, and he proved very useful, to quote Vraska earlier
yeah, he
on.
did.
So anyway, go ahead.
Before they move to it, it is interrupted by a distant roar of a dinosaur, and she says, "Jace, we need to get out of here." And at this moment, Jace remembers a new memory, of course, and the first thing out of his mouth is Vryn. And then Vraska sees these massive mage rings. Ring network, which we know is the mage rings of Vryn.
Right.
And this was Vraska's kind of place because it was beautiful, but it was gritty, the edge of civilization, and this, she knew, was Jace's home plane.
Mm-hmm.
And she's screaming at him that she's seen what he's seen, and she doesn't know how to help. And of course, Jace isn't responding because he is just lost. And the first thing they see there is a woman's face, peachy, flecked with freckles, chestnut hair, and she was reading to her toddler from a notebook. And as we move on, all sorts of different flashes come with this specific woman putting shoes on a child's foot that's whining, kicking, doesn't want to put them on, just like most kids, right? You know how this is.
Mm-hmm.
Putting on a coat, brushing the hair, patching the wall, dog-earing an anatomy textbook, checking under her son's bed, kissing away a bruise, just continues on, and then she finds out that he's going to be a scholar. He goes to the city and is learning all about these academic terms, and then she finds out that he was forced to forget about his first planeswalk, and his second, and his third, and how much his years of training he was forced to forget. A flash of reality. They see Jace on the ground, forehead pressed to the earth, and Vraska realized this horror of how many times Jace has been made to forget everything. Also, the fact that he had complete control of his abilities by the age of 13.
Yeah.
Which is insane to think of.
Yeah.
And then the next part of the vision came to fruition, and a giant sphinx, overwhelming, dominating, and encompassing, much like how Nicol Bolas is, but smaller. And what happens here is we get to relive the fight between Jace and Alhammaret.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is we get to see it from a third-person view.
Right.
Instead of the first person. And after a lot of fighting and just mental attacks from both of them, Jace rips into the Sphinx's mind and tears out his mind, destroying it.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, he also pulls his mind out.
Yep. Well, what I find extremely interesting about the way that Vraska describes this is, if you remember back to the story of Hour of Devastation, the way that Nicol Bolas's mind, the way that Jace describes it as a wall, an impenetrable wall, and that's exactly how Vraska is describing it through the memory of Jace, except this time, at 13, Jace is able to penetrate that wall and dive into Alhamret's mind and essentially stop him from breathing. Because back in the origin story, which we may or may not touch on, in a future episode, Jace was having a very, very
Oh, we probably will.
yeah, Jace was having a very hard time just going straight up against Alhamret, mind versus mind, like I've got more mind power than you, blah 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 blah. But eventually, what Jace decided was, well, I'm just gonna simply make him forget how to breathe, and it worked. And Alhamret dies, and you can see through Vraska's eyes that Alhamret is suffering, and Jace, like almost unknowingly, killed him this way. He knew it would work, or he thought it would work, but he didn't know the effect that it would have on him, and the fact that he would have to sit there and watch this guy suffocate, over the course of many minutes, instead of just an instant and humane, quote unquote, death. He has to sit there and watch, and Jace is constantly telling himself, I did this. I am the one who's responsible for this horrific, murder, essentially.
Display.
And so Jace, it starts to form the mind and the behavior of the Jace that we were used to before seeing his new development here on Ixalan. He's just carrying the burden of himself and painting his own picture to make himself look like, a bad guy. And so that's really tough to have to grow up and conduct yourself in life, be the living guild pact, all the while thinking that you are a bad and evil and horrific person. And so, Vraska is just floored by all of this. So then, you find out that Vraska sees Jace planeswalk away after killing Alhamret. And then you also later, once they zap back to Ixalan, Jace finally starts to come to. The blue in his eyes starts. Oh wait, not yet.
Subside.
Not yet. They relive a moment when they first met on Ixalan, or first met, I should say.
Yeah.
And she really, really was touched by this moment, because all of that coming full circle. And then the Jace that Vraska knew and kind of helped build up at this moment in time, it's a great moment. And then after she gets to see this, that's when they zap back, come back together. Jace's eyes lose their blue glow. But I mean, he's able to stop projecting these images, even though Vraska can see that he's still obviously shaken by them.
And in this doing so, Vraska starts thinking about how this changes their relationship and asks about it. And one of the questions she asks is, "So do you remember it all?" And he's like, "I almost all of it. There's still bits and pieces missing. You're an assassin." She's like, "Yeah.
Yep.
But that's not me anymore. That's never been me."
Yeah.
And there's kind of this moment of realization while he's trying to recollect everything, because, I mean, he just remembered everything about his life.
Yep.
And she can see how much it's weighing down on him. He looks physically fatigued.
Yep.
And
Vraska even apologizes to Jace, I'm sorry I tried to kill you back on Ravnica. And instead of being like, yeah, you jerk, Jace is like, well, I know that you were only doing it, out of, you wanted to benefit your people. So it was kind of, forgivable in his eye. So, so then they stand up on the riverbank, and Vraska gets to finally see Orazka for the first time. Like, it's a good view of it. The golden spires reaching high in the sky, and she pulls out the thaumatic compass, and sure enough, it points an arrow straight to this big, tall tower off in the distance. And then she sees a huge staircase, and it's like, well, we really better go. We're almost there. We've got to push on. And so they, in continuing their journey, they just continue sort of bonding and talking about that. I mean, they shared quite an intense moment that, does not
Yeah, they do.
exist between two people. She essentially relived Jace's life, all the toil and torment, and the fact that she turns to him and says, you know, I think the fact that you survived through all of that, and the Jace that I know, like, that's who you really are, and I think that you are, an incredible person. And Jace is like totally taken aback by this compliment. He's like, wow, he's never heard that from anyone before. So it
No
really
one.
just,
Yeah.
makes him feel all
It
warm
hits
and
him
fuzzy
hard.
inside. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's a moment here where she extends her hand out to him and asks, "So you ready to do this?" And it's kind of this timid hand put out where you're like, I don't know if they're gonna reciprocate me.
Mhm.
And Jace assures her and goes out for her hand and says, "Yeah, we can do that."
Yep.
So as they walk around the valley, there's this gorge between them and Orozca. They get to the same steps that Kamena has already gone up, and Jace makes a funny quip. Is like, a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to go up these steps. And she's like, really? You always seem so built. And he's like, uh, that was an illusion.
Yep.
And I thought that was just so funny.
Oh
He
yeah,
was
and then
making people think he was stronger than he actually
yep.
was.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's
What a
just
what a
such a
narcissist.
Jace thing.
Yep. Yeah. And it ends with
Yeah.
Jace looking at Vraska and saying, he grinned, "I used to be a coward." And then I'll just quote the end here. It says, "He let 'not anymore' hang unspoken in the air between them." And Vraska caught his smile
Yeah.
as he turned to ascend the golden staircase towards Araska, one strong step after another. So, Vraska and Jace back together. I'm very glad to see that even though all his memories came back, not only was he still accepting of Vraska, but the fact that she shared all that with him is it's
Yeah.
crazy. And now recalling back to that story card of induced amnesia, I really wonder, why he would be doing that to Vraska. Whose benefit would that be for?
Like I, I still think it's him helping her to forget the troubles of what happened to her on Ravnica,
Okay, interesting.
how she was treated. I'm still pretty sure on that.
Yeah, um, and like I was saying about him remembering himself crushing Alhamret's wall of his mind. I mean, that's a seriously
Yeah.
powerful being there. I mean, like you said, not Nicol Bolas level, but Jace may have been stronger before planeswalking away from Vryn. Because he was
Yeah.
pushed to the test mentally there constantly by Alhamret. And who knows? Maybe the next time Jace encounters Bolas, he'll be, even stronger than he was before. But we'll just have to wait and see for that
Yeah.
one. So, any other?
Which we're of course definitely excited for.
Absolutely. Any other story speculation or comments you want to talk about, or should we move on?
Gosh, I'm just excited.
Yep.
We haven't got much more new art for Dominaria, so we're just looking forward to next week's story. Remember, though, for you to get your sweet hands on those story cards that we talked about last week,
Oh
you've
yeah.
got your pre-releases. Go out and play.
Yep. And
I know I will.
do you think if you pull that black card that lets you pull a card from outside the game, is that going to have to be one of the cards from your pre-release pull?
It is always from your sideboard.
Ah, okay. All right. Well, we can dream. Um, so we leave our lore corner and let's head into some news and announcements. Let's do some as foretold.
Did I tell you about that?
What did you foretell the news and announcements for this week?
I really did. You know that? because we just had
Nice.
that giant GP in Santa Clara. And there was also
Yep.
a Star City Games event in Columbia, but the GP is what was really important because we were playing. It was team trios constructed, so that's one person
Hmm.
plays standard, one person plays modern, and one person plays legacy. And the
Yes.
results are in. Standard is a horrible format. I mean, it's not
Standard
horrible, but
Standard is, I believe I heard somebody say, approaching Caw-Blade levels of saturation of a
yeah.
deck. I mean, if you are wondering why Star City has, canceled its standard events for the first half of the year and instead switched them to Team Trio events, well, here's why. Because, you know, and this raises up a good question, Greg. Does your average player prefer watching, or no? Let me preface it like this: do you think that the pro players, the true hardcore grinders, appreciate this layout where energy is approaching, like I heard, Cobblade level saturation and percentages played at these big events?
If you ask me, really, pro players are going to play whatever they want to play. And whatever's good is what they're going to play. So
Sure.
they don't have a preface to a preference to playing a style. Because as a pro player, you should be good enough to play any format comfortably and win or enjoy it.
Right. Because
Um,
once the field boils down to, only one, maybe two decks, you get the benefit of being able to anticipate the field with, your sideboard and, come accordingly. And then there are people who would suggest that that is a much more skill-intensive format, and it really caters to the people who want to play all these big tournaments, grind it out, get their pro points, qualify for the pro tour. Um, but then on the flip side, Magic is really pushing its streaming and coverage. And does your average person who tunes in to watch this coverage want to see incessant teamer energy mirrors?
I mean, I know I don't. It is unenjoyable because you're like, okay, turn one, attune to Aether. Turn two, pop out a little dude. And it's a really. You just get to see everything that's going to happen. So there's no variance. There's no real enjoyment there. So
Hmm.
I think it's a bad choice for Wizards to be focusing on it like they are. And it
Now,
just. I know they've made answers. The problem is that those answers aren't at a point where it could be played and taken care of.
sure. Right. Now, with the spoilers coming out for Rivals of Ixalan, we got the pre-release this weekend. Do you see any tools that are going to be printed that actually could maybe rival this Teamer Menace? Rival.
I don't think there's anything that can rival it, but I definitely see some controlled decks getting some cool tech. Like, I was talking to my buddy about this. I think Azor's Gateway is going to be a lot better than people think. Because
Hmm.
how many times when you're playing a game of Standard do you have a dead card in hand game one?
Yeah,
Often, right?
true.
Now imagine you
Yeah.
got this gateway that allows you to exile that card, get rid of it, and draw something else for 3 mana.
Hmm.
And then after you pay
Yep.
that initial 3 mana, it's just one.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, and then guess
I
what?
think that
You get to the top end and you play your Azor, and you're like, okay, well, I got Sphinx's Revelation. I'm gaining a bunch of life. Oh, my gateway flips. I now tap that for 15 mana. Do I win the game?
right. Right, but I mean, even still in standard, what is your mana sink that will let you win the game like that? I mean, I can't think of any. I can't even think of like a fireball that's legal in standard right now.
Uh,
But unless you're wanting to drop huge creatures,
I don't know.
which then,
There's this really cool black card in Standard called Torment of Hailfire.
oh yes, okay,
Could you
all
imagine
right,
an Esper control deck running that?
that would be fun to watch. I tell
Like
you what,
they go
that would
top
be
end, they
really,
flip the gateway, and then they say, "All right, I'm going to Torment of Hellfire you for 13. Take
yeah,
39 or sacrifice, nobody wins from that
Right, and
except for
I
you.
think this also kind of harkens to what a lot of people are saying about how they love cycling. Like
Yes.
I personally feel like Sweltering Suns is a way better card than a lot of people are giving it credit for because it is such a speedy answer to an aggressive board, and you can
Hmm.
cycle it away if you don't need it to draw a card. I mean, paying two to throw it away and draw an extra card, it's very very strong at the low risk of being able to wipe the board if they flood it with tokens or if they get aggressive or what have you.
Yeah.
um, and I think that cycling is such an amazing mechanic, and I really really hope that becomes one of those evergreen mechanics that we see because everybody loves it, and it will promote some sort of variance because you're going to be able to play cards that you normally wouldn't want to play in game one, as you're saying, dead cards.
Right.
But it'll create some stronger matchups that
Now,
people might not necessarily be ready for.
well, I
You
want to
know?
talk about this gateway here. Like you're talking about cycling cards. Now imagine that you've got all these cards that you want to play with, but because they don't have cycling, you're not. With a card like Azor's Gateway, now all of them essentially have cycling with that out, and it's for one.
That's true. I mean, the thing about Azor's Gateway is it exiles it, right?
You know, in a lot of games that hurts. I think it is something that's fine to do, um,
Sure.
because uh, how many times are you getting it back? If you're not playing Gates of the Afterlife, you aren't. And
Right.
a card like this just decimates those control decks playing the Scarab God because you get to exile creatures that you don't want to play, and Scarab God can't uh, 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 uh,
It can't eternalize them or
eternalize.
whatever,
Yeah,
bring them
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Anyhow,
I
we've digressed from the original question of do we think
yeah, is
Wizards needs to
Teamer
step in for more bannings before we reach Dominaria in April? Um,
yeah. I
I
mean, I think the
expect we're going to
idea
see something banned. What it's going to
I think
be,
the
I don't know.
idea of banning Attune with Aether, it's a good idea, but that's not going to say that they won't just like shave a color and then play a two-color energy deck. I mean, we still have the fast lands that are legal. We have cycle lands. We have,
Well, I mean,
you
the
know,
proof is there because there's 4 color, there's 3 color, there's Soul Tie, there's Teamer. It's all in those colors. So, what's the card that really is enabling it right now? That's a really hard one to say because guess what? You can play Bristling Hydras in all 4 of them. You can play
mhm,
Attunes, Glimmer. The variance is in the red, where you have things like Harness Lightning or Glinseed Siphoner. But
right.
ultimately, what makes it a problem is that energy is a resource that doesn't vanish at the end of turn or at the end of phases, and that's what makes it so busted.
Sure. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Attune with Aether is really enabling these 3 and even 4 color energy decks. So if it does go
Oh
away,
yeah.
sure, you might see instead a 2 color energy deck of sorts, maybe even 3 if people really get interested in stooping
Oh
so
come
low
on.
as to play something like Evolving Wilds or something like that.
People are gonna
But
be greedy, and it's just
right,
I, the cards,
okay,
the deck is
yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
wish I had a better
So
word.
so Yeah, no, that's fine. But anyway, also just speaking about GPs, and yes, Santa Clara was amazing. Um, in fact, do you want to run down any of the decks in the top eight?
Uh, I don't want to necessarily go down what it was. I do want to talk about some numbers. Standard, as we said, energy is a problem. There were 7 of 8 decks in the top 8 that were energy.
Yeah,
The
well,
other one was the Godfarer's Gift deck,
okay. Ooh,
which,
yay,
yeah,
represent.
yeah, which is
Yeah,
cool. Then we go to Modern, and in Modern, it is 7 different decks completely. And if you ask me, that is a healthy format right now because
oh, absolutely.
it's just a lot to play. You've got everything. I think the only deck that's doubled over is Death Shadow.
hmm
Um,
Well, this actually then spawns the question: if Modern is
Sorry,
the
it's
healthiest
Affinity.
format.
Affinity was the double
What's that?
over. Affinity was the
Oh,
double
okay.
deck, not Death Shadow. Sorry.
Okay, gotcha. So if Modern is, becoming the healthiest format, is it a problem that Wizards is printing 2 master sets a year, especially if they're chock full of Modern staples? Doesn't that get more people into the game playing Modern as well as sell more product for Wizards?
Well, I don't think it's a bad thing. The only thing it's bad for is the secondary market. Like,
Sure.
uh, all it's causing is these stores, these backpack traders, these collectors, these people that
Mhm.
are hedging their bets on cards to sell
Mhm.
them off because there's no reason to hold on to them. I mean, if you're buying standard right now, you don't want to hold on to it for 5, 10 years till it makes value. And even then, you
Yep.
might not get your value. So it's more of a financing issue for everybody. Otherwise, it's great.
Right.
Everybody could get into these extended formats.
Mhm. The only real aspect of consumer confidence Wizard has going for them, and it's unfortunate, is that reserve list
Yeah.
because anything modern, anything printed and playable in modern has the potential to get reprinted. So even though something like Chalice of the Void is like $80 or $90, there's nothing to say that it won't get reprinted next year in a master set, and the price might go down a little bit. I mean, take a look at Ether Vial even. That card was getting up there, I don't know what it peaked at, like 40 or 50, got reprinted, it only dropped down to like 30, and it's
Yeah.
still, gaining more ground. So
Um, yeah.
cards like Tarmogoyf, though, once that saw its like 4th or 5th reprint, then it finally started to come down into the realm of, potentially,
Accessible.
achievable. But it's even falling out of favor in modern. Like, people are playing less and less Tarmogoyfs with the printing of Fatal Push. So it's a combination of things, and it's just like the ebb and flow of the meta that's going to dictate the price of these cards as well as the printings of them.
Yeah,
So,
definitely, definitely. And then as we
but
move out of modern, we're going to take a quick look at Legacy, where there are 6 different decks, but 3 of them are Delvers, but they're different versions of them.
hmm
And
Delver's a
honestly,
good card.
I feel that Legacy is, can I get Emrakul or Grizzlebrand out turn 2? Okay, I did. I win.
Yep.
Otherwise, that's about the format. So if you enjoy that type of play, that's where you want to be. But if you haven't noticed, there's been a huge spike in those prices because of the reserve list. I was talking to a friend over the weekend. Land Equilibrium. I don't know if you know what that card is. It was something that was a dirt cheap card. It's like a 4-drop that makes people sacrifice permanents at the beginning of their upkeep, or lands
hmm
specifically. It's like $100
hmm
now for no reason.
Oh, jeez.
Not getting played in anything, but hey, that's how the market is
Yep.
sometimes.
Well, I mean, that's when I looked up the price of my Invoke Prejudice. The card that I
Yeah,
bought for $40 years ago. It's north of $200 now.
yeah,
It's just the rarity and the fact that these cards are never getting printed again is, like I said, the only method of consumer confidence Wizards really has going for them,
yeah,
with the worry, quote unquote, of all these reprints coming out.
yeah. No,
So
definitely.
So let me backpedal a little bit here, Greg. What you were mentioning about binder grinders and stuff. We were a little late to the party on this one, but I believe it was on December 24th. Channel Fireball made a statement, and I'm not going to quote it directly, but essentially it says that people are not allowed to come to GPs anymore and be unofficial binder grinders.
Yeah.
You can't bring a gigantic binder and just sit there and trade for value all day. Um,
Well, I'm pretty sure it states they can't sell.
they can't sell. Okay, yes, yeah, no, true.
The
Um,
stipulation is selling. So if you have like a binder of stuff that you want to trade off to get and then sell it to a store, that's fine. But if you're
mhm,
cashing out on the floor, that is not
right.
okay.
Okay, you know what? Here, just to be official, because we are an official podcast. I will
Officially.
breeze through this quote real quick so we can be specific. Everyone is sorry, quote. Everyone is welcome to trade cards with the goal of building decks or collecting their favorite cards. Trading cards for the primary purpose of gaining value or earning a profit is restricted to those who have purchased a vendor booth for the event. Buying and selling cards with anyone other than official vendors is strictly prohibited. The enforcement of all event policies is at the sole discretion of the CFB event staff. CFB being, of course, Channel Fireball. So you're right, Greg, when you said that they're prohibited from buying and selling cards. Absolutely. They want to encourage trading. But, I mean, it's really going to put a damper on what some of these people go to GPs for.
Oh
You
yeah,
know?
no, I agree completely. I mean, we were talking the other night about the idea of having a fee to get into a GP, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to bring this up because this is a part of it.
Yeah.
Because of these things, prices are an all-time high for GPs. I don't know if you've looked at the pricing, but I
I
know a
have.
sealed site event was $50, and all you got
Mm-hmm.
was that Mutavault promo, which is sweet in its own right, but
Mm-hmm.
otherwise your value is through the floor. And it's like
Right.
I don't see where it has to be this expensive for them
Right.
to run these events. I mean, conventions, they charge a head charge of like 30 or 50, 30 to $50, and that's all they
Mm-hmm.
charge. And
Well, well, and that's the thing. Like, they're saying that these GPs are turning more and more into like cons or conventions
yeah.
because you have the cosplayers, you have the artists, you have the
Mhm.
vendors. You have so much more than just a main event where people are playing. But they're the ones who are paying for the whole event through their entry fee. And, even though they may have dropped the entry price from $100 to $90, if you have the serious players coming and shouldering the cost of, paying for the cosplayers and paying for the artists. I know sometimes you do have to pay to enter Artist Alley, and you tip
Well,
them for when they do
I,
art on your cards.
I
But
think
it's crazy.
if you ask me, I understand that Wizards is paying for cosplayers to go to events. I think that's something that shouldn't be happening because cosplayers do it for the love of it, not to make money. So I'm not condemning anybody here because there's no reason to, but let them take care of their
So,
own things. I think we shouldn't be paying for that type of stuff. Artists being there, sure, that's fine. But if you want to pay for extraneous things like cosplayers or that, make sure it's a valued experience. Otherwise, don't have it.
right. Well, because then if you have these, cosplayers, walking around doing their thing, like it's great for the atmosphere, but you could get people coming into GPs who don't pay a dime, walk around and have an incredible experience, meeting people, visiting these vendors, then they can just sit someplace and,
Uh,
play their own games,
Talking to
like
your favorite podcaster.
yeah, exactly, right? I mean, take GP Vegas, for example, the biggest GP of the year, like ever. And you have all these people who come through, and, granted, lots of them are spending money while they're there. But can you imagine if the tournament organizer were just to charge, 20, even $10 just to get through the door to experience the Grand Prix? Like, that would actually, in my opinion, that would help shoulder a lot of the costs of these events, and you could probably provide even more services, like like a booth where you can just go by and pick up a water bottle or something like that.
Yeah.
Another thing I hear a lot of these serious players complaining about is the fact that they don't care about getting swag or a playmat or anything like that. The fact that they
Yeah.
just have to pay $90 to play in a constructed main event seems ridiculous, and I'm on
Yeah.
board with that. These are the people who are driving the game, making it, seem like, they're promoting the high level of play,
Yeah.
but we're making them pay for it. So it just seems so counterproductive. Now, obviously, you got to do things like pay the judges and rent the venue and all this other stuff. So there is a lot of cost, but you could definitely do a little bit better job of spreading that cost around,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
making it more appealing to people who want to come from far away to actually play, because this is how you qualify for the Pro Tour. This is how you get on Magic's grandest stage,
Yep.
is go to these GPs and play. And to somebody who wants to shell out a plane ticket, shell out for a hotel room, and shell out for an entry fee, I mean, you're talking almost no less than like $300.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And that's
So
if you live in the same country.
I did the numbers on this. Looking at it, going to Vegas, you've got your hotel room, which for the weekend you're going to spend anywhere from $200 to $600. Your ticket, if you buy it far enough advance, is going to be a couple hundred. Or even if you're driving there from across the state, it's going to be a couple hundred. So your cost just there is going to be like half a thousand. And
Right.
with your food and everything else, it's going to be like going on a vacation.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's a lot.
It's definitely something worth taking a look at. And I know that Channel Fireball is running all the GPs this year, and there's a lot of pressure on them to put forth a value product that people want to pay for. So
Yeah.
I just hope that they take a look and see exactly what all of their options are, not necessarily just what they're used to and what they've been doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know I don't really go to GPs that often, but I did go to one like years ago, and it was great. I didn't participate in the main event. I walked right in the door, got some artists to sign some cards, tipped them a little bit, and played some games of Magic, and that was that. And I tell you what, I would not mind paying $10 for that experience, not at all. So, I don't know, just very, very interested to see how this develops and how
It comes
tournament
about.
organizers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, all right. Well, that'll kind of conclude our talk for these GPs here. You want to talk about the reprints?
I would gladly talk about these reprints. All
Okay.
right, guys. So,
Okay.
as you know, if you've looked at the full spoiler for Rivals of Ixalan, we have reprints from Ixalan. Now, most of us are in the same boat of why the heck are we reprinting cards that we just left the set for? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's 6 of them. Sailor of Means, Legion Conquistador, Colossal Dreadmaw, and I can't remember the others off the top of my head right now. But why are we reprinting these cards? Like, I understand if we were going to have an isolated draft format, sure. I understand that because sometimes you need a card. But this seems like lousy construction or set construction, because honestly, there should be no reason for us to reprint cards like these. Sure, they're common. We want to drive home that there's dinos. We want to drive home that the world's changed and we're in Eroska now over Ixalan. Cool. But I would have rather seen maybe another variation on a dinosaur, maybe another variation on a vampire. I feel this is lazy design, and I am very sad about this.
And I find it interesting at the card choice, like Legion Conquistador, in my opinion, seems like the most logical one for them to do, seeing as it does stack on top of itself. And as a common in a smaller set, you are much more likely to get them. But things like Colossal Dreadmaw, like those things are kind of bombs, and
Yeah.
you're really not going to be running. I mean, it may be 2 in a deck, and if you're going to be, putting that in both of these sets, are you really going to want to draft 5 or 6 Colossal Dreadmaws? I mean, I don't know. I'm not the best drafter in the world, but that just seems a little bit counterintuitive to me.
It's really top end heavy, which when you go top end heavy, it's awkward because you don't
Yeah.
have that quick game. You don't have that early game against decks. You just get trounced upon when you're playing against them. So
Right.
it feels weird
Yep.
and awkward. I'm not a fan of the reprints. I know you had a card that you were unhappy about. You want to go ahead and talk about that?
Well, yeah, it not so much me, but that, again, a lot of people have been talking about Patrick Sullivan's rant about the Ravenous Chupacabra card, and It's, I tend to agree. It's very hard to just sit and watch these cards get printed that are creatures that have spells that we want to cast on them. Not only that, but ridiculously powerful spells. So, I mean, if you haven't watched it, you can go on YouTube and look up, Patrick Sullivan rant, and you can find it. But yeah, I agree. The fact that there is no drawback, it's just destroying a creature. And the only things that this won't touch are things that are indestructible or have hexproof, which there aren't that many of them. So this is going to be running rampant in Standard, in my opinion. I mean, everybody says, with the Scarab God, this thing is just dumb. I mean, you bring back a 4/4 creature that blows something up immediately. That's a little bit too strong. Even at a 4-drop spot, like by that time your opponent's definitely put out something of value that you can target. Not everything is a bristling hydra, but if they were to drop like their Glorybringer or something, obviously just boom, Chupacabra, it's dead. And it's really going to put a push on creatures that have more enter the battlefield effects, which is where we're already headed. I mean, there's a card in Kaladesh, Panharmonicon, and you don't really see it in Standard so much because it is technically a 4-mana do-nothing artifact.
Yeah.
But if people were to actually play with that more in Standard and Modern, I think that you could even just see how powerful these enter the battlefield effects really are. So, I don't know. It's, the days of the spells being powerful, a lot of people feel are in the past, making way for now it's all about creatures. Yeah, now it's all about creatures. So you're going to get a creature that says, when it enters the battlefield, demonic tutor. Oh, wait, they already made that. It's called Sidisi Undead Vizier.
Whoa, you also forgot about the demon, too, Runescarred Demon.
Runescarred Demon, exactly. There you go, yeah. And, you want to counter a spell? Well, I'm surprised they aren't printing, a flash creature that oh wait, Spell Queller. It's absolutely nuts. Like I would be very interested to see if we could ever return to a state where it's all spells, but I don't think that's where Magic's headed.
Oh,
it's all,
no,
creature.
Because everybody likes to have dudes on the field. And Wizards wants you to have dudes on the field. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having dudes on the field. It's just a little ridiculous.
Well, and that's the problem that, Sullivan was talking about. There's a lot of sweet dudes and dudettes that you can put out on the field. The only problem is they don't gain you the instantaneous advantage of an enter the battlefield effect, or they don't have haste, or they don't have indestructible. So a card that, might seem really, really cool if it survives for a turn, like Azor, obviously it's an amazing card, but I hate to use the old adage, but it dies to Doomblade or it dies to Ravenous Chupacabra. So it's just, the thing with energy is the fact that it gets, okay, I don't want to go into it. If you want to look it up, go ahead and look it up, but it was very interesting to hear. So, yeah, it's a very, very weird card, and you can expect to see it everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So.
All right, well, let's wrap up our news segment here, and we're going to dive into our third segment, the brews segment. I got a deck that I've been working on here for a while. Not too sure how good it is, but I finally got a list together. Wanted to get it out there, and we're going to be doing something, trying to do this each week, and that is going to be our combo of the week.
Combo of the week?
So, Greg, you were talking to me. What's that?
We could be synergy here too, right?
Yeah, you could do synergy. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, Greg, this is mainly a part where we can talk about cards or interactions or synergies that people aren't necessarily talking about, because one of the things that I know you and I like to do is brew decks. And even if we can't get an entire deck together, there's a lot of cards that trigger these ideas that we have. So we just wanted to share that with you, so you can get an idea of what's running through our mind, and maybe we can, help enlighten you to a combo that you can use in your EDH deck or your standard deck, or maybe even your modern deck. So
I don't know. Modern's kind of dredged.
Modern's kind of a stretch, sure.
No.
Sure.
Modern is kind of dredged.
Oh, modern is kind of dredge. Oh boy. All right. Well, Greg, why don't you tell us what you were thinking about?
So I'm a huge fan of older cards. Brainstorm Brewery is the people that got me on this card a while back, and I'm still kind of interested. I haven't done much with it recently because I haven't picked any up, but Seance just got a bit better with Amonkhet.
Really? How did Seance get better with Amonkhet, Greg?
Well, because if you remember correctly, Seance exiles creatures from the graveyard and gives you tokens that are a copy of the creature. Right? In Amonkhet, we got an enchantment that doubles tokens. So your
what
mono white
enchantment
deck
would that be, Greg?
I don't know, it's Anointed Procession.
Oh wow! Surprise, surprise.
But
so how does Seance work with Anointed Procession?
So Seance says when every upkeep, if I remember correctly, let me give you an exactsies on this card, okay?
There we go, because we deal in exacts here at the win condition.
So, Seance is a 4-drop enchantment that says at the beginning of each upkeep, so that's yours and your opponent's, you may exile target creature card from your graveyard. If you do, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that card except it's a spirit in addition to its other types. Then exile at the beginning of the next end step. So you get the ability to bring back a creature for a turn. I mean, it doesn't gain haste, but
right.
In decks like Hazazin or like green-white decks or green-white-red or green, any colors you want, you can bring things like Avenger, Deranged Hermit, anything like that. And with you getting tokens of these things, I mean, even a Cloud Goat Ranger is good. Because imagine getting a Cloud Goat Ranger that gives you a 3/3 body and two Kithkins. And then guess what? You get 2 Cloud Goat Rangers and 8 Kithkins. And you get to keep those
That's pretty
Kithkins.
strong.
So if you've got cards that give you extra stuff, like maybe the Golem cycle, the Splicers out of New Phyrexia, and like those give you golems when they enter the battlefield. Could you imagine a Maul Splicer, the dude that gives trample, that gives you 2 3/3 golems for 7, getting reanimated with this and giving you what? You would get 8 3/3s?
That's pretty strong.
So
that's really strong. Yeah.
And that's just 3 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to have other stuff in your deck, like Giselle Goldmane or what be you, and it just makes it stronger. It does more. And then, of course, you can run the fun card that I like, Sundial the Infinite.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
which
if
allows
you
to exile that trigger to exile these tokens, and you get to keep them forever.
Right. I mean, you already get to keep the one generated or the ones generated by Anointed Procession.
No, you don't.
You would just lose the original one, correct?
No, you would lose both of them because the ability that's putting them out is doubled, so it doesn't say that the new version, the copy is put up by Anointed Procession, is still put up by Seance, so it still has that clause on it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But
I mean,
you could use effects like Sundial to exile that so that you get to keep those tokens.
Yeah, I mean, my mind is racing right now. I mean, I can imagine something like Seance, bringing back a Snapcaster Mage with Anointed Procession out. All of a sudden, you're able to flash back and cast 2 spells from your graveyard. That's, takes a little bit of work, but once you get that engine running,
the other thing to remember about this,
extremely powerful.
Seance does it every upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do this on your opponent's turns, too.
Man.
Could you imagine seancing an Azor?
Well, yeah. Yeah. Oh, so that it would actually would it
so they can't
would
play
the text on
instants
Azor
or sorceries?
Right, during the next turn or that player's next turn?
It's the player's next.
Because if it
the next turn, so they can't play stuff on your turn.
okay, obviously that wouldn't affect
I
much
think,
for
yeah.
sorceries, but
yeah,
counters and stuff like that, instance, yeah, that would be pretty good.
Anyhow,
Yeah. Anyhow,
these
that's
are
pretty
just
good.
dreams of a deranged man.
A deranged hermit? No. But what? No. Seance is very strong. I think it's very interesting how a card like that has the potential to see play. It's just it costs so much. But if someone was actually dedicated enough to make a deck that worked, especially if we were to get maybe one more token doubling effect in white, not that we would, but it's interesting space to be explored.
Yeah.
Yeah. My little interaction / combo that I was thinking about definitely falls under the dirtily category, but potentially powerful nonetheless. The card that was previewed for Rivals of Ixalan, the Immortal Sun. Now, the Immortal Sun shuts off all Planeswalkers' abilities. So, obviously, you can't activate abilities of Planeswalkers you control, same with your opponents. Now, what if you were able to take advantage of that such that it's active on your opponent's turns, but not your turn? And that just got me to thinking about cards like Flicker Wisp and Glimmerpoint Stag, where if you were to drop the Immortal Sun, and obviously after your turn, when you've activated all your Planeswalker's ability, maybe made some mana with Xenagos, or did some other stuff, you drop the Immortal Sun once you're ready, and it shuts off all of your Planeswalkers. You play the rest of your spells for turn, pass the turn. It goes around, comes back to your turn, and then you play your Glimmerpoint Stag or your Flicker Wisp, and you flicker out that Immortal Sun. So now you can activate your Planeswalker's abilities again, and at the end of turn, it'll come back. I don't know. Like I said, seems kind of dirtily, but a very interesting interaction. Now, obviously, you can't just blink the Immortal Sun because that would come back and prohibit you from using your Planeswalker abilities immediately. And you can't use someone like Venser to get it out of play to bring it back because Venser himself is a Planeswalker. But if you're able to get that Flicker Wisp or that Glimmerpoint Stag, and then throw in an extra thing like Kiki Jiki or Deadeye Navigator, it could be fun. So
yeah, no, there's a lot of options. I made a suggestion of Brago.
Indeed.
Brago with these
right,
cards allows you to get that distance.
Yes, and the thing I like about Brago is the fact that he can flicker any permanent. So if you tap out all your lands to do stuff, you can flicker them back into play with Brago, essentially letting you use your mana again during your second main phase. So he's pretty good. That was a good call, Greg.
I mean, sometimes I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. My dirtily fantasies drive my Magic game.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Indeed. All right. Well, speaking of dirtily fantasies, I just wanted to run through my my deck idea here for this
All right,
this
let's hear
Mardu
it.
deck list. Okay, so it's really hinging on the 4 Claim to Fames, which I think is an amazing card. So what it's going to be running is 4 Glorybound Initiate, 4 Harsh Mentor, 4 Dire Fleet Daredevil, 2 Deadeye Tracker, 2 Kari Zev, 4 Kitesail Freebooter, 2 Metallic Mimic, 3 Devoted Cropmate, 2 Fumigate, 2 Dusk Dawn, and then there's a combination of either or Vraska's Contempt or Cast Out. And then another card that I'm really interested in putting in there is Sword Point Diplomacy. Now, this deck is full of 2-drops, obviously, because Claim to Fame works on 2-drops. Mm-hmm. But they also will each gain you some sort of value, either when it enters the battlefield or, from attacking. So obviously my first thought was the Glory-Bound Initiate, dropping in for potentially, if you cast your claim to Fame, both of them, you get 6 points of lifelink damage, hasty, coming out of the graveyard, which seems pretty strong. And if you're running enough board wipes like Fumigate or Dusk Dawn, you can essentially clear the board and then just start hitting them with, one creature at a time. But as long as that creature does lots and lots of damage, well, then you're going to be getting ahead as well as gaining, life in that respect. Now, I really like Sword Point Diplomacy as a card draw card because, you're obviously trying to damage your opponent. So by casting it for 3 mana, you're putting yourself so far ahead in your plan that you're either going to be drawing 3 cards or your opponent's going to be taking 9 damage or some combination of, the two. So, I mean, let's even say that you go Sword Point Diplomacy and you reveal 2 lands and an action spell. And they say, okay, well, I'll pay 3 to get that action spell out of here, but, you draw the 2 lands. Well, guess what? You're not going to be drawing those 2 lands the next turn, and your opponent took 3, and all you paid was 3 mana. It just seems like a very, very strong card. And in a deck like Mardu, it's, really tough to draw cards because obviously you're not in blue. But
Yeah.
I think that, Sword Point Diplomacy plays a great part in this deck. Now, Greg, shot out of a cannon here. In this situation, what would you prefer more of, Vraska's Contempt or Cast Out?
Oh.
Both are 4 mana removal spells. Vraska's Contempt will permanently handle a planeswalker or a creature. However, Cast Out will deal with any non-land permanent, and it cycles.
I think I'm going to favor Cast Out because of the more toolbox of the format.
Right. Okay.
Right now. Yeah.
I think it covers more. It can hit enchantments. There's really not that much enchantment removal in the format right now. So
getting played.
Yeah, getting played. True. Well, I mean, people do what they do, and that's they net deck and they play the best deck. So, there's no enchantment removal in Standard right now. And then other cards just to throw in based on your situations and how you actually wanted to craft this deck. Obviously I mentioned Sweltering Suns. It's a great sweeper that you can cycle, clearing the way for your creatures later in the game. Tocatli Honor Guard, it is a 2-drop, and it does prevent Enter the Battlefield effect, so you might want to, take out that Dire Fleet Daredevil if you do that, or that Kitesail Freebooter.
But
Kitesail Freebooter is just so strong.
A card like the Honor Guard stops most of the energy decks in their tracks.
True. Right. Now, also, Blood Crazed Paladin. This is very interesting because if you Wrath and then you cast Claim for just 1 mana to bring that Blood Crazed Paladin back, it gets all the counters of the creatures that died that turn. That seems pretty strong.
That's cute.
So, yeah. Also, I was thinking about Earthshaker Kenra, because obviously, bringing it in, forcing your opponent to not block with a creature when you're trying to get in with something like Glory-Bound Initiate seems pretty good. Speaking of Glory-Bound Initiate, Gifted Aetherborn, another possibility of a 2-drop with lifelink that when you haste it with +2/+0 can really swing the game in your favor.
Yeah.
Bomat Courier for a speedier option, which also promotes card draw. So the main reason why the list that I started with I was interested in was because I could run those metallic mimics because all the creatures were humans. Now, if you were to put in something like Gifted Aetherborn or the Earthshaker Kenra or the Bomat Courier, obviously you'd lose value on your metallic mimic. But another card in this deck that I mentioned, Devoted Cropmate. That is a lesser-known uncommon from Amonkhet, which is 2 and a white for a 2/2 creature. And when it attacks, you can exert it, and you can return a creature with converted mana cost 2 from your graveyard to the battlefield. And that's all this deck is. Go ahead.
Would you run something like Renegade Rallier? Well, that's a green, though. That's the only problem. Never mind.
Yeah, that would run into another color problem. But with Devoted Cropmate, with Dusk Dawn, and with Claim to Fame, you're getting so much more value out of your creatures, even after they go to the graveyard. So in a potential strategy here, you would open up, maybe get a little aggressive with some creatures. Okay, you can let them die. That's no problem. You're going to bring them back either one at a time or en masse with a Dawn spell. So it seems like it could have some long game potential, but then it's just a case of deciding which specific removal or board wipes you want to use. Cards like a Braid are good, but it's not going to be a catch-all when you need to get rid of a Hazaret or a Scarab God or something like that. So that's why I was suggesting something like Cast Out of Vraska's Contempt. So anyway, it seems good. It seems fun. Definitely want to try it out. Try to maybe take it out and take it for a spin, here pretty soon. But anyway, that's the deck. Haven't come up with a name for it yet. That'll come in time. But yeah, let us know what you think. If it's complete and total garbage or if it actually may have some legs. So yeah. We shall see. All right. Well,
with bated breath on that one.
Yeah, right. I'm holding my breath right now. All right. Well, Greg, it's getting to be that time. Why don't we let them know that they can head over to Flipside Gaming at flipsidegaming.com, where you can make any purchase for sealed or singles, any other gaming products, and if your order's over $10, use that promo code WINCONDITION in all caps and save yourself 10% off your purchase, which will help contribute to future show giveaways.
Yep.
So, Greg, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at noobslasher2003. Where can we find you?
And you can find me at Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at MTG_Sean. The show is at The Win Condition. You can email us with thewinconditionpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our YouTube channel. We got a link in the show notes. We finally put up our Baron Von Count versus Baru Squirrels deck game. We commentate over it, try to give you guys some ideas. I know Commander is on its way out, but it's still fun. It's good times.
On its way out.
Oh, okay. Good point. Either way, check it out there. See what you think, and let us know. And yeah, all that being said, Greg, thanks again.
No problem.
And we will talk to y'all next week.
Alrighty, guys. Have a good night.